and right before his most arguably fit. What was that?
Again, all of this really was so choreographed by David.
Clearly the whole story is entirely about rebirth and dying in order to be born again.
You're making a movie. You have control over everything that somebody sees and hears for 2 hours. The audience, they know you can do anything. So the question is, what don't you do?
He was looking for this unemotional, routine, brain dead.
Again, this is not a movie about real life. This is a movie about movies,
Climbing out of the coffin would be the most literal.
Pretty darn literal, but jumping off at the end is probably the most literal thing, that you have to die in order to start again.
The Game is a 1997 conspiracy thriller directed by David Fincher and starring Micheal Douglas. The film centers around a cold, isolated, detached millionaire who, on his 48th birthday, receives a mysterious gift from his younger brother, which sets Douglas's character on a wild journey and makes him question reality and who you can trust. This film's a bit of an oddball in David Fincher's filmography because it's just not often remembered, I suppose. It's right after his hit film Seven, and it's right before his arguably most famous film, Fight Club. So it's just that forgotten film that most casual moviegoers probably don't remember, and I'd probably say a fair amount of cinephiles probably don't remember it either. I can see why, to be fair, because it's not David Fincher at his best. It's a film the man's actively disowned, and I'd be lying if I said it was a movie where he's at the top of his game. No pun intended. But at the same time, it is a movie I do have a big soft spot for, and that obviously means it deserves a self-important video essay. Yes, I guess my question for this essay is essentially that. Because it's not my favourite David Fincher movie, it's not even in my top 5 to be honest, but it's a movie I keep coming back to, and honestly it's weird because I went into this most recent rewatch just thinking about all the holes you could poke into the script, because the screenplay is messy, yet it is a movie I do think has a lot of merit, and that sort of contradiction is what I want to basically dive into. Let's fucking do this. In this section of the video, I'm gonna tell you, well, over the course of the whole video, I'm gonna tell you one by one my personal ranking of my top 5 David Fincher movies. So let's start with the first one, and that one is Fight Club. Yes, let's go back to the video because I do not know what to say now. So this next section, we're gonna have a little bit of fun, we're gonna have a little bit of play around. A lovely, lovely audience right here. Come on, give me a cheer. They're so kind, oh my god. Amazing. So we're going to give a little bit of context to the film at hand. We're going to do the behind the scenes, how it came to be, what the film happened, what am I saying? We're going to give a little bit of context to the behind the scenes. Let's do this. So the original script for the film was written in 1991 before being sold to MGM. Originally, the film was set to begin filming in 1993 with Jonathan Moskowitz directing. However, the project got shifted over to Polygram Entertainment and Moskowitz dropped out of the film. Oh no, that is devastating. This, however, was when David Fincher became interested in directing the film because he was drawn in by the plot twist. Fincher brought in the screenwriter for his second film, Seven, Andrew Kevin Walker, that's his name, and the two of them began working on the film for the next 6 weeks, trying to get it to their liking. At this point, Fincher was also in pre-production on Seven, and he intended to make The Game and then make Seven, but then when Brad Pitt's schedule became available, Seven became his priority, and then The Game just went on the back burner for a while. And then when he finished Seven and released it in 1995, The Game then opened back up, and then that became his next movie. This, however, it worked in Fincher's favour, to be fair, because the success of Seven gave Fincher a little bit of juice, a little bit of whiz. Seven was financially successful and it went down well with critics, so it just gave Fincher an extra bit of backing going into the game. After the release of Seven, Jodie Foster was being eyed out for the sibling role that ended up going to Sean Penn. Jodie Foster felt uncomfortable playing Micheal Douglas' sister, with there being a 19-year age gap between the two. And when she signed on to the film Contact, the Robert Zemeckis film, great film by the way, you should watch that, but that's another tangent. What's I saying? When she signed on for Contact, she became out of the question, and then the role ended up going to Sean Penn. This is when the film finally began filming in San Francisco with a shoot that lasted 100 days. And then, yeah, I don't know how to end this bit. And my number 4 for my ranking of the David Fincher movies is, drum roll please, 7. It is 7, yeah.
But I understand why I walk it alone, 'cause hey, we're keeping a secret.
I think one of the main things this film does really well is create a sense of this general chaos and confusion throughout the whole thing. The film spends all its runtime right up until the final scene solely from Nicholas's perspective. We don't see the CRS doing their thing. We don't cut to them planning anything. We don't cut to them breaking into the house or hiring actors. It's all on Nicholas and what he's experiencing. Information is slowly being dripped to Nicholas and therefore the audience, piece by piece. In the director's commentary, David Fincher talked about how all the creatives in the film have complete control over every single thing the audience sees. This could be applied to literally any aspect of the film, and especially story structure. When a film chooses to cut to another scene or location or to another character, which this film, again, never does. It's stuck on Nicholas the entire time. We're with him right through till the end, which just doesn't really happen in most movies, and I want to dissect why is that. We only know as much information as Nicholas does, and it forces the audience to connect with him emotionally. We're in this with him, and we find out information when he does. We're all in this together. It's like when Christine is revealed to be working for the organisation. We feel the betrayal and hurt that Nicholas is feeling because we only know as much as Nicholas does about her. So when she changes, we feel the hurt that he does because we've also been betrayed by her. We thought she was on our side, but turns out she's not. It's what makes mysteries so engaging. Most movies tend to have a more omniscient vibe to them, as in, we tend to know more than most of the characters, but this film actively doesn't do that. It's a great way to get us to emotionally, just like, give it that extra oomph when connecting with a character. My number 3 for my ranking is, that could be, if you did not understand what I just said, it could be misconstrued in many different ways, but my number 3 is Zodiac. Yes, a little bit of true crime, a little bit of spookiness, a little bit of Jake Gyllenhaal going insane, and I am just saying words right now. Going back to the director's commentary, the crew worked on the film and described the movie as one that's not about real life, but a movie that's about movies. Throughout the commentary, everyone kept coming back to the idea that Nicholas is being pushed through his own movie. All the actors working for the CRS are doing stunts and playing characters wildly different to themselves in order to trick Nicholas. He's taken part in the movie, and I feel that strongly links to why the film feels propulsive. One of the reasons it feels so compelling is due to the fact that it sets up all these dramatic questions early on of what is the game and how much of it can we trust, what's real and what's not. Dramatic questions are the cornerstone of screenwriting. They're effectively when a film asks a question to the audience, whether it be literally out loud or asking through what the movie shows you in its first act, and then spends the runtime answering that question. The dramatic question of most romantic comedies is, will this couple get together? Or the dramatic question of Avengers Infinity War is, will Thanos get all 6 Infinity Stones? This is one of the many tools screenwriters will use to try and make a movie more interesting, because people love knowing the answer to things. It's human nature. It's why unsolved mysteries are so popular. In an earlier version of the film, Fincher said that there was a longer version of the scene in which Christine and Nicholas headed back to his house and see Sarah's there. This longer scene would have delved into Christine more and given us more of her backstory. Fincher ultimately cut down the scene to how it plays in the film itself, as he wanted to live in the lie of the film a little bit longer and not give too much away. This example is a perfect microcosm of how the film is able to remain so engaging, even though there are many holes you could poke in the screenplay. The film sets up this dramatic question of what is the true motives behind the game. The film then proceeds to only show us the events of the film through Nicholas's perspective, thereby meaning we find out information that helps answer these questions when he does, and boom, now we've got an immersively engaging mystery. The film leaves these questions hanging till the very last scene, so even if the film doesn't make sense all the time, the audience is still engaged throughout because, on some level, they want these questions answered. This begs the question, however, is the film still effective if you're watching it for the second time if all the answers already answered? As I mentioned beforehand, part of what makes the audience connect with Nicholas when watching it for the first time, at least, is the fact that you and him both don't know any of the answers to the very end. Nicholas is the audience surrogate, so we relate and emphasize with him because, like us, he's also going through this experience, not knowing what the fuck's going on, so we feel it's confusing. But if you already know his brother Conrad is acting when he says he's been followed, or we already know Christine's name isn't even really Christine, does the film hold up? For a mystery that's as well written as, say, Knives Out, then I'd say it wouldn't be a problem. A great, entertaining, well-made movie will always be rewatchable. But if a film is this, where the ending just sort of leaves you going, well, that barely makes sense, then I start to wonder. My number 2 for my personal ranking is Gone Girl. Tell me what, I forgot where it was for a second, but it got there. Yep, Gone Girl. So, after being left for seemingly dead in Mexico, Nicholas walks back to San Francisco and tracks down one of the actors working for the CRS. He then uses the gun and forces the actor to take him to the main offices of the company, where it's revealed that all the people Nicholas and the audience have met up until this point have all been hired by Conrad as part of the game. This sends Nicholas into a spiral which leads Nicholas to being on the roof with a gun, and after accidentally shooting Conrad, Nicholas then proceeds to attempt to kill himself by jumping off the building. This whole sequence is then revealed to be staged, with Nicholas landing perfectly in the party room, all his friends there, along with Conrad, who just faked dying, as the big climax of the game. Now, the big question is, what happens if Nicholas jumps off the building anywhere other than where he did? Like, if he is 6 inches to the left or 6 inches to the right, then he'd be dead, and the CRS would have a big ass court case on their ass, effectively. Laid to be responsible for the death of a multi-millionaire. Why is Nicholas not mad at Conrad? Why is Nicholas so willing to split the bill? The man nearly died and he just don't care. One could argue this hinders the movie to an extent because it simply does not make sense. But at the same time, the film is able to carry you through this with the direction. It's this weird sort of middle ground where it shouldn't really work, but the filmmaking is so strong that it kinda just does anyways. What makes this weirder is, according to the screenwriters, Nicholas falling from the building was addressed in a more believable way in the script. They talked about in the director's commentary how when Nicholas jumps off the edge, there was one very specific place where he could do it, due to there being walls on both sides, meaning he could only jump from a position where he'd have to land on a big balloon where he did in the movie. However, when the scene was actually shot, The walls weren't there, so it just makes Nicholas happening to jump where he did feel a tad bit contrived and just unbelievable. On the one hand, it is very strange that a director as detail-oriented as David Fincher would miss something like this. And from quotes from the man over the last couple of years, it seems like he holds the same opinion. He does not look fondly back on how he handled the third act of this movie. It's the one thing where he constantly keeps going back to that and being like, David Fincher does not like the third act of this movie. However, from the way he talked about it at the time, it does seem very intentional. Going back to how the creatives who worked on this film kept stating that this movie is about movies and that Nicholas is living in his own movie in the context of the film. The creatives also stated how Nicholas falling off the building at a height that should kill him was more of a metaphorical rebirth than something that was meant to be taken literally. It's a parable, it's a morality tale on how to become better than you were. And to their credit, it does kind of track in the movie as a whole. The movie centers around an insanely wealthy dude who proceeds to lose everything he holds value to and has to rebuild himself from the ground up in order to become a better man. It's literally the point of the game. The CRS literally says the game is whatever the person needs it to be, and this is what Nicholas needed. Also, there is a scene at the start of the third act where he wakes up in Mexico and he just literally wakes and walks out of a coffin. Poetry, what else can I say? The filmmakers do often refer to Nicholas as Scrooge, as in The Christmas Carol, and I really like this reading of it. It's less something based in reality and is more of a fairy tale. And my final one, my number one, is, I think, another drum rolls in order. Let's build up some anticipation. Oh my god, what it's gonna be? It's the Social Network. Yes. I think this is a good moment to talk about plot versus story and relationship between the two. In Patrick Williams' video essay about Tenet and Vibes movies, he touches on how Tenet is a movie where, like they say in the movie itself, it's better if you don't try to understand it, you feel it. And the same can be said about the game. During the writing of this video that you're watching right now, I got bored and just watched that essay by Patrick again because I'm incapable of not procrastinating, and it very much dawned on me that we have near identical takes on plot and how it relates to story. Essentially, the plot for me is, while not completely incidental, it kind of just is incidental to me. I see plot as a jumping off board for the characters to flourish, grow, change, and as a way to force the audience to connect with them. And that's what I mean when I say story. It's to watching the characters grow and exist in the space the filmmakers have created. If I didn't watch the game for 5 years, after that period of time, I wouldn't be able to tell you all the specific plot mechanics that happened in it, but I could talk to you for days about the arc Nicholas goes on and how he changes throughout the entire film. And it's the same with any film I watch. There's been a rise over the past few years where people have been getting really caught up in the idea of plot, whether that be plot holes or there's been this big discourse as well over the past couple of months over the past couple of months, or people just going to town on the idea that sex scenes shouldn't be in movies because they don't advance the plot. Yeah, it just feels so baffling to me because it feels like such a detached way to analyse and just generally discuss any kind of media. And also just the idea of plot holes and the whole sex scene discourse is just really dumb to me. It's just stupid. Don't do it. I think there's a balance, plot can often be equated to story structure to a degree because they're the broad story beats that make stuff happen. So the save the cat moment in the screenplay, or the inciting incident, or the midpoint, those are all plot mechanics that typically make a story feel like a story. But they're not really the story. It's just a template for the things you're trying to write, or a template for how to analyse something that someone else has written. What I'm getting at is, it's the bare bones. That's what plot is to me. The inciting incident in the game will be different to the inciting incident in West Side Story, for example, but they're still both using the same plot mechanics. Essentially, what my point is here is plot, and I guess the structure it can create is often a good tool to analyze a piece of art, but it shouldn't be the be-all or end-all. You can't study a screwdriver in order to assess the functioning of a table, even though it could be a factor into how well built the table is. It's not the table itself. Was that a good example? I don't really know. I'm just making this up. But bringing it back to the game, it's essentially that the story of it is emotionally resonant, and I don't think we should attach arbitrary rules or structure to a thing that doesn't necessarily fit that. Like, that doesn't inherently make the film bad or wrong. It's just different, and that's fine. If you go down the rabbit hole of it's just a movie about movies, then you could probably say something about parasocial relationships with actors. Well, I wouldn't say parasocial, as that implies that it's one-sided and that one party isn't aware of the other, but Christine is very much aware of Nicholas. Nicholas just doesn't really know Christine, only the image he's projected to him, the character he's seen her play, yet by the end of the film he has formed an attachment to her and is willing to go on a coffee date with her, essentially. It could be linked to how we form attachments to popular actors and people in the entertainment industry, even though we only see the characters they project onto the world through the characters they play and on social media. The game controls information like a film does and makes Nicholas the protagonist of his own story, forcing him to change in the process. The game manipulates the emotional reaction now of him and forces him to change his worldview, just like a movie. Films do this to the characters and to the audience all the time. It's kind of the point, manipulating an emotional reaction out of you to make you feel something. I guess the relationship and bond that builds between Christine and Nicole is just a way for Nicholas to regain his humanity. At the start of the film, Fincher's intention was to nail the monotonous nature of Nicholas's life. Fincher wanted him to appear, in his own words, brain dead, and Christine was his way out of that, even if Christine wasn't real, just a fairy tale. This is honestly just a really long-winded way of saying, even if the movie's third act doesn't literally make sense, it doesn't mean it's broken. Him falling where he did is almost like fate. It's a morality tale. It's a Christmas carol. It's a parable about how people can break toxic cycles through the relationships they make. That's the story. I've always struggled with endings. Like, I often don't think that far ahead enough to plan one out, or my brain would just fizzle out on my idea and it just gives up and then oops, I'm out of words. It is a movie that I've been really into for years at this point. Even though it's not one of my favourite David Fincher movies, it's one that I really enjoy. So I guess the point of this essay was a way for me to try and dissect how I felt about the thing and my overall take on the movie as a whole. And I feel like I kind of got there. I don't know. I'm just making this all up. Yeah, like I said, this movie isn't top tier Fincher for me. It's one that's really captivating. I find it kind of cool how it has this sort of I think it's similar to The Walk, the Michael Bay movie with Nicolas Cage and the other Brigands of Alcatraz. That movie and the game both have similar sort of energies. They're both ADHD, propulsive, non-stop, balls to the wall, and we're never going to slow down at all. And I think it makes sense because both David Fincher and Michael Bay they came to prominence through directing music videos and commercials, so it kind of makes sense that they'd be good at that. And it is kind of bizarre that David Fincher has made so many good movies. If the game was written and directed by anyone else, it would probably be their best movie. So the fact that David Fincher has made this movie and it's not even in his top 5, it's probably, for lack of a bad term, one of his worst movies. But it's still better than most movies. I don't understand. how did they do this? The original, or the title for this essay on my Word document reads as, "Is David Fincher's The Game a misunderstood masterpiece, or just fine?" And I feel like that's a little bit clickbaity on my part. It's a little bit like, yeah, but because I don't really, the term masterpiece is like a big word, and I don't really like using it because it just feels like it feels overly dramatic and a little bit pretentious at times. But yeah, I also have a very anxious mind. I tend to overthink, and I feel like that's just what my brain is doing right now. I guess it kind of could be a masterpiece at the same time, because like if I've sat here for like a month researching, writing, filming, editing this whole essay about why I think The Game kind of rules and why it's one of my favourite movies and why I kind of love it. So maybe it is, and maybe I'm just making shit up and I should probably just our thoughts. So, well, as was all I've written in my script. So I'm just gonna be like, bye. Remember to like this video, subscribe, share it around. All engagement is good engagement, and that's the video. Thanks for watching.